and welcome to Let's Talk Seniors, Memory Care Issues, Alzheimer's, Dementia, Parkinson's. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Deirdre Vervo, and many of you may know that I own Just Like Home. We have 2 senior homes. We are currently transforming them into residential care homes. They're both located in Shelton, 6 people each for people with memory care issues. Interested? Give me a call. We have a super special guest today, and his name is Ed Knight, company Transference. You've probably never heard of a company that does anything like this, so it's a unique niche, and it's one that is very needed. If you're an executor of a will, you may be very overwhelmed by all the paperwork and the death certificates and the changing of titles and the figuring out what the stocks and bonds are and whatever you have to do. And it could take a long time. You might have to wait for mail to come in at the end of the year to even know everything going on. It's very overwhelming, especially when you're going through a period of grief. Ed Knight, he was formerly spent 15 years as a wealth manager in the wealth management field as a financial advisor and relationship manager. And he came up with a really unique niche called Transference. And it resolves administrative red tape issues for those that are newly appointed executors, or if you're handling the affairs of somebody passed away, even if you're just power of attorney, caring for a loved one. He was born and bred here in Connecticut and married for 20 years, has 2 beautiful daughters. And we're going to bring Ed on right now to tell us all about himself. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Hey there. How are you? Appreciate you having me.
You are welcome. So, Ed, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background first in wealth management and how that brought you, and you figured out there was a niche for such a service that is invaluable.
Yeah, definitely. I got into the wealth management field back in 2008 when the financial world was about to crash. So it was an interesting time to experience that as a job. But, I got my Series 7, passed all my exams, started sitting with families at the kitchen table, doing a lot of wealth planning for them for their retirement, and in the process, as a financial advisor, I transitioned into another role as a senior relationship manager. And I worked at one of the wealth management institutions for over a decade. And while I was there, I kept seeing a trend that a lot of surviving family members or spouses would come to the wealth management office I was at, and their husband, for example, had recently passed away. And they would literally just kind of drop a folder on our counter and say, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
We'd open it up and it would be statements from, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, tons and tons of statements with the deceased husband's name all over them, So, since we were a Fidelity office, this is where I was working, we'd pull those statements and we explain, hey, man, we're going to handle this for you, but you got to call these other institutions. You got to, figure these other processes out. And there was always a stress, how, do I need an attorney? How do I get this done? Should I call my accountant? And, at the gist of it, it was all just administrative work most of the time. There wasn't really any legal issues. It was basically removing the deceased name from a joint account, transferring the deceased IRA into an inherited IRA. It's just a lot of paperwork. And so I just started noticing, there's this needs help, so I started Transference based on that sort of discovery. And one of the things that I sort of promote and I kind of push is that for administrative paperwork, you don't really need an attorney. There aren't any legal issues going on here. It's literally handing in paperwork, getting it processed, watching the money get transferred over, and then ending the case. So that's kind of the root of how I discovered this need.
And it's a great idea. And it's funny when you say you don't need an attorney, because you can go to your attorney, but it's not the main thing they do. So then you're kind of on the back burner. It's not the thing they do every day. So they're handing it off to their paralegal or secretary. And for you, it's your focus. Like you are going to have a list and make sure that, nothing gets missed. You're not just taking their folder. You're going to be looking at their tax returns and making sure they didn't miss anything, right? To make sure it's all in progress.
That's an excellent point. And when I do a presentation, when I talk at senior centers or other networking events, I explain what I do and what the attorneys do. It's the exact same thing. We do the exact same thing. We process this administrative paperwork. They can do it. I can do it. We both do it perfectly a great job, except they are going to charge the attorney fee, which is an acceptable fee. They deserve that fee, which could range from $300 to $400 to $500 to $600 an hour. My rate is roughly $150 an hour, and it's always negotiable. And I work with clients on how to pay things out. But like to your point, that is my focus. That is not the attorney's focus. They hand it off to, a lot of the paralegals. Attorneys want to deal with legal issues. They want to deal with people contesting the will, issues with the beneficiary. There's a trust problem. That's their thing. My thing is the administrative thing. They don't need, or they should not be charging $400 to $500 an hour to fill out paperwork.
Right. And being that is what you do best, and that's what you know, and that's what I know this because I do short sales, and it's a very similar situation, and it's all title work. And so what you're doing is basically a lot of title work, and it's always like, I've been doing it 12 years, and there's always new things coming up. So I'm sure if you go on, you're just adding a lot to your knowledge base because there's so many crazy situations. I went through this with my own mom. My dad passed 8 years ago, but my mom was moving last year, and I went through her file draw, and she's like, I don't know if I still have this stock. Could you find that out for me? I don't know if, and it was like things transferred. I'm sure you've gone through this. Like if you've had a stock for a long time and it got sold and got sold and got sold, especially because you had bank stocks.
And they merge and all sorts of things. Yeah. A real case. To your point, a real case that we're literally working on is a grandson with his grandmother. They're kind of cleaning out their grandmother's house. They find a box. Lo and behold, there's about 25 stock certificates with the grandfather and a great uncle. They're titled on the stock certificate. So it's a joint account. The grandfather died about 4 years ago. So, what do we know? They call me up and they were talking to attorneys and they're like, well, we don't think this is a legal issue. This is more of an administrative issue. So hence they called me up and we're working through the red tape to kind of get that resolved.
Awesome. What about like cars when people die and they can't find the title like that?
Oh, yeah. That's a whole nother process dealing with the DMV. I actually have some outside resources where I work with certain garages, and I explain it as like, hey, we got an abandoned car. They haven't used this in so many years. Do you know of anyone? And in that world of automobiles and mechanics, they always know somebody. So they can always work something out, and then we work out the whole title situation and figure it out from there.
Yeah, there are so many things people don't even realize. If the house is in both people's names and one spouse dies, and there's what kind of things should people be looking for, concerned about when somebody dies or when they take over?
Yeah, when I do a presentation, there's one section of my presentation that I sort of explain about. There's being proactive, there's the proactive approach, and then there's the reactive approach. I wish everyone would be a little more proactive, but it's tough. People are people. They just do things after things happen. But proactively, I've sat down with actual couples and say, hey, do you know where the will is? Is the will updated? Make sure you do. Do you know where all the accounts are? Do you know how many accounts there are? Do you know all the beneficiaries? Are the beneficiaries updated? And then I basically explain at a very minimum, get down and write a piece of paper, and write down all the account numbers, all the passwords, all the locations, where's the safety deposit box key, all that information. It's highly confidential information, but it's useful information in case one of the people passes away. The other one will at least have this information to help handle things going forward. I tell them to write this down and put it with the will. And obviously, if they don't have a will, get a will and just keep that updated. So proactively, that's the best way to handle it. Reactively, after there's a life event, I just help the clients. Let's just get down and dig into the files and get all the statements and just gather everything that we could. And that's kind of like the real heavy work, is just getting all the information in front of us after someone passes away.
So there are other, like I have friends whose parents, one parent's alive, the other parent needs to go on Medicaid, on a home.
Yes.
You have to find all that parent's assets and change them. And are they on the title? Where are their accounts? They have to account for them. When you're doing Medicaid spend down and you have like $10,000 account here and a $12,000 account here and like bank accounts, which a friend of mine, his mom has like 10 different little bank accounts everywhere. I don't know why, and she's
Yeah.
alive. She just thought that was safe, I guess. But he has to track everyone down for the last 5 years. And I guess that's something you would do, because it is very arduous when you're working full time. You're trying to help a parent. And this is like so much paperwork.
Yeah, the Medicaid spend down. I mean, Medicaid. I don't deal too much in the actual application process, but I know the 5-year look back rule, and I know a lot of people don't really stay on top of this, and they think they can just jump into Medicaid, tomorrow. That is not the case. So to your point, you have to find out where all these accounts are. My best suggestion, especially in a Medicaid situation, is consolidate everything, find out everything, put everything into one spot, and then get it out of the person's name as soon as possible. Setting up a trust or whatever sort of scenario that may be. But I can help people in that situation, because Medicaid is extremely, on top of how these accounts are being utilized, and they'll flag you in a second, and your application will get denied if you're not following their procedures.
So, Ed, if somebody doesn't have a will or is not the power of attorney, do they first have to go and get some sort of legal paperwork so they can work with you?
The thing with me, with my service, it's purely administrative. So hypothetically, someone passes away, they don't have any beneficiaries, and they have one IRA account. So right off the bat, no beneficiaries. So this is going to probate, and you're going to become the executor, because say you're the surviving spouse and you want to take on that responsibility. As long as everything is pretty straightforward, and using the one count example, you just need to submit a form for the probate court with a copy of the death certificate to kind of get the estate established. That's where everything sort of begins. So once you become the executor of the estate, you can start the steps of getting that IRA into the eventually estate account. And I can help you through those steps through the paperwork and stuff. Sometimes people want to call their attorney during this process. That's perfectly healthy. It's perfectly fine. Some attorneys obviously specialize in probate. I say definitely call them, just to kind of clear your head and kind of get a legal perspective on things. But once everything is in line and it's just paperwork, that's something I can totally help you out with.
Awesome. And about how long does the process usually take? Like, somebody passes away, they have a file of paperwork, they're going to hand it to you and say, I don't know, here's some bank statements, here are things, I'm not sure what's happening. My name's on some, my kid's name's on some, my deceased husband's name's on some. How long does it usually take?
Yeah, I know. I wish I can put a perfect time frame to that. Every case is so different. I dealt with a case where a woman, using the that one IRA account example, she was the executor, but we were dealing with a certain financial institution that I won't name that kind of dragged their feet. You know what I mean? So what we thought would take a couple weeks took about 2 months. And then there was a business owner, whose father passed away. He was the owner. He had a couple of accounts. It was pretty straightforward what we do. When we called the financial institution, they emailed us the forms. We sent the death certificate back. That was wrapped up in about 2 weeks. So, it's hard to really tell how long it'll take. When I give a proposal, I kind of don't put a time frame on it. I kind of say, this is what we're going to do. These are the steps we're going to take. It might take, 2 to 3 weeks, or it might take 8 weeks. But, I always explain there's a beginning start to this. There's a middle part, and then we're going to get to the end at one point.
So what should people do when they come to you? So are you suggesting that perhaps they already have seen their attorney and now they have to figure all this out, and then they come to you with their file? Do they need to bring their tax return from last year so you can figure out, what they might have listed on their tax return?
Yeah, that is always helpful. So like I said, when the life event happens, and say they spoke to their attorney, and like the attorney can definitely be involved if the client just feels better having that sort of legal backup. But once they speak to me, I'll find out what exactly they need to take on from an administrative standpoint. And I always offer a free consultation. I always sort of get them on the phone or sit down with them, and just to kind of see if I can help. Usually I can. And once I find out that I can help, I'll basically come up with a proposal and say, hey, from an administrative standpoint, you and I are going to be able to tackle the following. And I'll kind of bullet point everything that I can do for them with their participation in the proposal. And so they can see it kind of in black and white. And then once they agree with the proposal, they sign off on it. And then, then we just, hit the road and just start doing all the administrative work accordingly.
Well, it seems like a very rewarding job because you're really helping them and taking the stress and overwhelm out of so much administrative paperwork. And especially at when somebody's grieving or when they're
Mm,
older, like my mom is almost 87. She's perfectly capable, but she didn't want to do it. She was
yeah.
just like, I can't be bothered. Like, this is exhausting. I can't stay on the phone for half an hour waiting for somebody to pick up the phone. And I'm like, Mom, what else have you got to do? Like, just stay on the phone. But,
No, you're retired.
yeah, she didn't want to. Like, it was too
Yeah.
much for her. Like, she just like handed off to me. Like, she just, and then I'm like, okay. And I had to learn like everything. And it
Yeah.
wasn't easy. If I had somebody like you, I'd be like, all right, Mom, here's Ed Knight. He could do
Yeah.
everything for you. That would have been so much easier than me trying to do it while I worked in the middle of the day, being on the phone with these institutions with my mom on hold for like an hour.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah. Yeah.
great.
You're spot on with that. And it's unfortunate, but in the wealth management world, we are forced to call the 800 number. And when you're calling the 800 number, you're going to get different people when you're talking about the same issue. You bring up an
Yeah.
issue of saying, hey, we're just looking for the paperwork. We got to get this processed. We got to move this over to an inherited IRA. I just have a couple questions, an hour or 45 minutes on hold. And then you don't get a person who's that savvy and they don't really know the answers. And you got to call back. It's just part of the process. That needs to be improved on their side, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
And not as a dig to seniors, but like my mom, for instance, wanted to tell the person that answered the 800 customer service line at a giant company
Mm-hmm.
what should be done there. And I'm like, Mom, they're like just answering the phone,
I
but she
know.
wanted to tell them her whole story. And I'm like, this isn't even the person that could possibly help you. Like,
Yes,
let
I know.
ask them to, say, but she wanted to tell everybody her whole story. And I'm like, no, we're going to be sent to like 7 different people right now to get to the right
Exactly.
person. Let's just wait to tell your story and ask your question. So I think that it's tough. And I think also when you become a senior, you think it should be easier.
Yeah.
Medicaid should be easier. Medicare should be easier. Like things should be easier for seniors, but they're not. So I know you're dealing with a lot of seniors, a lot of executors who are the spouse of somebody passed and they're grieving and their head's not in the right place. And they just need somebody to take everything away, take the overwhelm out, do the paperwork. They don't even want to do paperwork as it is. They might not even been the spouse that did the paperwork to begin with, like paid bills or did anything. So they don't even know, like, it's not even their bailiwick. They're like, paperwork. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I call them, God, and I hate to even sort of admit this, but the perfect client for me is when the decision maker unfortunately passes away because the surviving spouse didn't
Yeah.
really do anything. They didn't make any of the financial decision. And unfortunately, the person that passes away, all that knowledge went with them. And I kind
Yeah.
of call them the deer in the headlights client because they don't know what's going on. And to a point of how attorneys can definitely help, but sometimes to give you a real life example, it's not always the best case scenario. I was actually sitting down with some estate attorneys, explaining my business. They agree to it. They like the idea. And then one of them was starting to kind of shake his head. I'm like, you're thinking of something. Tell me your story. And he explained, to your point, he was on the phone for almost 2 hours trying to figure something out with one of the financial institutions, got nowhere, got hung up on, had to call back, and he had other things to do. So he basically clocked it out as 2 hours, nothing accomplished, charged $800 for 2 hours of no service. And he felt bad. But that was the agreement, and that's why the people, when someone passes away, they run to their attorneys, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But when it comes to the administrative side of things, you have another option, I guess, is what I'm trying to throw out there.
Well, it's great that you can work hand in hand with the attorneys, and I'm sure you're getting tons of referrals from estate attorneys and probate attorneys because you're saving them from doing work like you say they don't want to do. They want to do the legal stuff. They will do
Exactly.
it with their client, but they'd rather have somebody to hand it off to like you that's going to be more cost effective and that's going to be laser focused on what and get it done, and not an attorney that is 2 hours in the middle of the day and maybe next week they might have another 2 hours and maybe the next week, but you're going to do it till it's done because that is
Exactly.
your job. So I love Transference. Ed, you've started a great business. I don't know if this is anywhere else, but you could basically do this anywhere in the US, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's no licensing involved to fill out paperwork. And I always bring up a point when I talk to clients. As soon as things start getting legal, I stop. And I was like, this isn't my area of expertise. This is getting a little complicated. You have to talk to your attorney. And as soon as things start getting, from a financial investing standpoint, a lot of people ask, oh, and now I have the money. Where should I put it? I stop and say, now you need to talk to your advisor. So
Awesome.
I try to be right in the middle there. As soon as it gets legal, go to the attorney. You want to invest this, go to your advisor. I'm not going to give you any news on that at all.
But you can literally, since you can do this for anybody in the United States.
Anyone, anywhere, over borders, doesn't matter. Yeah. Every state has their own way of sort of doing things. You just got to get familiar with the paperwork, but it always comes down to more or less the same process.
Yeah. So if people live out in California and their parent dies here, or people live here and their parent died in Florida, you can help them no matter where they are.
Exactly.
You could do a Zoom conference with them, and you could help them do all the paperwork. They could just email it to you and roll over to you, and you can just start from there. So don't fret if you're not in Connecticut where Ed is. You can, wherever you are, you can definitely get help by Ed, because everything is virtual now and everything is by phone.
Exactly.
So anywhere in the US, Ed can help you. So Ed Knight, Transference, 203-623-6083. Ed, do you have any final parting words that you want to tell everyone?
Yeah, I just, like I said, I appreciate the time you're giving me here, Deidre. So this is a great little service you're providing here. But yeah, anyone who knows family members, who knows surviving spouses, who has elderly parents, like I said, there's a way to prepare for the life event. Transference can help you before that happens, and Transference can help you after it happens. So as long as you're aware that there's a before and an after, and you don't have to wait for something bad to happen to kind of dive into things, it's good to be prepared. We're always willing to help that group of people also. But that's about it. I appreciate this time, and this is a great show.
Thank you, Ed. Well, you'll have to come back on, and I wish you the best. And I know that we are in the Chamber of Commerce together, and you've helped many members there already. So thank you so much for your service. And it's a great service. So Ed Knight, Transference, I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All right. If you want to get in touch with Ed, anywhere you live, anywhere your parent lives, anywhere you're an executor, it's Transference, 203-623-6083. And thank you so much for joining us today, and I will see you next week. Bye.